Okay, I just want to make sure if everything is good. So, hey, Victor,
Hey, great to be
can
here.
you? Yes, yes. Can you hear me? Just want to make sure everything is good.
I hear you good and well.
Okay, that's perfect. So, first of all, I think this is big pleasure to have you there, and I can't wait to talk about all the topic related to you and Serverpod, of course. But before that, before I'll let you introduce yourself, I got some, I can say, funny question because with all the technology and AI tools like blockchain, there's a lot of new tools nowadays that keep coming out every day, of course. So, how would you describe the current state of the tech, or if you were just a doctor, for example?
All right. Oh, wow. It feels like it's a really shift in the whole tech
Mm,
industry, right? With all the AI things. I I personally think that it will take a little bit longer than what many people think when it
mm,
comes to like the whole AI part. Uh,
okay.
but hard to know. It could also be, you know, taking shape
Mm.
really, really fast. It's so hard to say.
Yeah.
If I had to take a
Okay.
guess, I think it's going to take a while before it replaces developers and workers across the
Yeah.
world.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you are very optimist and think that as developer we are going to work for some years also before being replaced, right?
Oh, for sure. I think we are the last ones being replaced, to be honest. I mean,
Okay.
imagine all the other like easier jobs than developers, how fast it will be
Mm,
to automate those. And who is going to automate them? It's probably developers, right?
yeah, totally agree. So now I will let you present yourself because I think this is one of the biggest reasons that people are here. They want to know about you yourself before we talking about Serverpod. So I will let you introduce yourself first.
Thank you. Well, I'm not exactly a famous person, but I'm Victor. I've been a software developer for many years. I started coding when I was probably around 12 and wanted to do computer games. I worked in the game industry for many
That
years.
was very soon, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a nerd, or I am a nerd, I guess, still. But I think nerds probably have more fun.
Mm,
But anyway, so I was lead developer at a really big game company in Stockholm.
okay.
And I think they took us a long time to build our mobile games. So I built a tool for building mobile games, and that got picked up by a bunch of big game companies. So one of them flew me over to San Francisco for an interview. So I ended up moving there. I worked there for a couple of years, and then I also worked for a startup until, unfortunately, they ran out of money, and then they sold me to Google. So that's how I ended up on the Google on Google and at the Flutter team there. So I was on the Flutter team very early before Flutter was even called Flutter. Actually, when I started, it was called Sky.
Mm,
And yeah, I guess uh, since then I moved back to Stockholm. I had another startup here, and obviously I built our app with Flutter. Uh, it
okay.
was actually one of the very first apps being released, done with Flutter ever. Maybe the actually first. So that's pretty cool.
So
Uh,
what was it like to work directly in Flutter teams?
Yeah, no, it was the people who worked there were so skilled. It was for me a great learning experience to work with all those
Mm,
people, and yeah, it was super interesting and challenging work. For me, I felt like I need to do something where I own my project a little bit more. If you work at a
mm,
company like Google, it wasn't really my first choice working there, and uh, I really
mm,
like it better in a smaller company when I get a
yeah.
little bit more of a say in what we build and the decisions we make. If you work at Google or any of these huge companies, right, you're a little cog
Yeah.
in a huge machinery. So I mean, nothing wrong with that. It can be a super enjoyable life. Working at Google was amazing in many ways. They have excellent
Yeah.
food. You get free breakfast, lunch, dinner at work, snacks, gyms. You have
So,
like a
so
bowling alley.
why did you decide why did you decide to stop working for Google? Yeah.
Right. Sometimes I ask that myself, but I just, I wanted to build my own projects. I think that was the main
Mm,
thing, and I did that before with my developer tooling that I built for games. So I've been building a lot of developer tools through my
okay.
career, and that's something I really enjoy. And I mean, that also how I sort of got the idea for Serverpod, obviously.
Mm, okay. That's great. That's great. So, when you were talking about like because you just start talking about the age that you were start learning programming, so I can guess that you start learning by yourself, right? Before finish at school and continue maybe at college. So you
Yeah,
got experience before, right?
yeah. You never, I guess, get finished learning anything, and especially not
Mm,
development. But I actually I learned by trying to program games, and then I'm so old, so there was no internet. You had to like go to the
mm,
bookstore, buy a book, read, and I got pneumonia, so I was sick for like 3 weeks when I was probably kind of been 15 or something, and I I had just bought a book about C programming, and I read it like
okay.
back to back in my bed. I was like too tired to get out of the bed, but I
I
read
think you was very inspired.
the C programming book I read and then like took notes, and that's how I learned to program. I didn't even have like the computer in front of me, so
Okay. That's great. That's great. Before we just start working on Serverpod, because we are going to talk about, you are saying that you have tried to launch your first startup first. So what was the decision when you just decide to stop working on that project before moving to the Serverpod project?
right. So we built a news app, um, which so the idea was to build a little bit of a mix between Reddit and Wikipedia, so people could like
Okay.
add links and upload things that are important. And I mean, I really would want to have something like that where people, look at the
For
sources.
yourself
And
or for people?
yeah, I want to read it. I think the world needs something like it, but it's also
Okay.
uh, so what showed to be pretty tricky with that was to make money from
Mm.
it. Um, so ultimately, that's why we couldn't raise more funding. But
Mm.
yeah, that's uh, we basically couldn't make it be profitable. That's why we ended that project. And then I had already started thinking a little bit about Serverpod because I missed having that when I built that news app. It was great building the app in Flutter, but I missed having a really good backend for it. And I mean,
Mm.
it's really nice to be able to use the same language both on the back
Yeah.
end and in your app.
Sure.
That's huge benefit. And for us, uh, when building that app, we couldn't use, for instance, Firebase because that would have been way too expensive. With like we pulled
Mm.
news sources from thousands of sites and then like combine them and analyze the texts with text analysis and stuff like that. So it was quite sort of back-end intense. It's not just like a user writes something. You had to like read lots of sources, process it, read it again, and you know
Yeah.
it
I
may
think
be
you are
possible to
right.
do Firebase, but it seemed like super hard. So I just ended up
Mm.
writing it
I
in
think
Dart.
you are right because people who really working, for example, if I took example of GS developer, JavaScript developer, they go JavaScript for both, like front end and back end. But when you are working with Flutter, it is a bit tricky to find some tools who can help you just building your own backend. I mean, if you just remove Firebase for that process. But before talking about Serverpod itself, let's just define what is Serverpod, because people came here, they want to understand what is
Oh
Serverpod
yeah,
itself.
of course. Um,
Mm,
so Serverpod is basically a backend for Flutter. So it's an
okay.
open source uh, backend, written for the Flutter community, if you will. So it's free to use. It's all open source. You can basically what we've done is that you add methods on the server, and then we analyze your server code and we take those methods and endpoints and bring them right back into your client, which you use from
Okay.
Flutter. So it's like
Mm,
we're making a copy of those methods, and then we handle everything from like packing down the data, unpacking it,
okay.
send it over internet, and you just make a method call. So it's it saves you lots and lots of writing that sort of layer in between. It's fine if you write it a little bit, but it's pretty tedious if you make a big
Mm,
solution, and just having that for free and make sure everything is up to date and consistent is really nice to have.
okay. So currently, how many founders at Serverpod? I think we are three, if I'm not saying wrong, right?
All right. Yeah. So when you create a new project, basically you have to install our CLI. So that's just you have to have Flutter installed, and then you do .pub, or is it
Mm,
.pub global activate serverpod underscore CLI, and that's how you install it. And then you can use the serverpod command, and then we have a serverpod create. And when you create a new project, you get 3 folders. That's correct. So the first one is the server. That's where you put like all your server methods, and you talk with the database, whatever you need to do in your backend. And then we
okay.
have a client, and that's pretty much just generated code that we import into your Flutter app. So we also create a Flutter project for you.
Mm,
So you get basically a whole package that you can use. Uh,
yeah.
it's
Um,
very, very easy to set it up.
yes. No. I was asking this question because I have already tried to run it.
Yeah.
In order to understand how it really work. Um. So. Uh. What was the choice, or why did you make the choice to have like three different, or to divide the architecture in three different parts, like
Yeah.
having client, Flutter, and server, for example?
Right. So the reason here is potentially you could like bundle it all together, but can also be
Okay.
very limiting, because maybe you want to have 2 apps. Maybe you have an admin app that just
Mm,
like the employees of your company have, and then you have an app that you send to someone else. And if you have everything bundled in one, that can be tricky. Uh, Also, maybe you don't want a Flutter app at all. Maybe you're writing a command line tool, and then you don't want to have the Flutter app. So that's why we have the server, and we like put the client in its own package. So that just gives that
okay.
flexibility of choices, and it's easy to change that in the future. You can add another Flutter app, or you can add another CLI. You can throw away the Flutter app if you don't need it. So it's really the client and the server that you need in your project, and then you can do whatever you like.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask some question which is more technical. For example, you were talking and you were saying that we got like client, Flutter, and server as big folder, for example. Can we decide to deploy, for example, a server pod as an API for already existing project, Flutter project, or not?
Oh yeah, of course. So if you want to add serverpod to your existing project, what you probably want to do is you create a serverpod project, and then you can just throw away the Flutter app, and you can add in your own app in there. Or you can like the only thing you need to do from your app is to link to the client that's
Okay.
everything your app need to have access. It mustn't be in the same folder. It just, the sort of
Mm.
standard serverpod structure, but you can call it whatever and just include the client library.
Okay. Yeah, there is someone in the comment section who was saying
Yeah,
that
I see.
I'm just going to show the yeah he was saying I'm working on a very big Flutter which is Thorstein. We have this app live in UK, France, writing test case for it, but challenging. Oh, okay.
There-
So I think he is talking about writing unit test um for server pod, for example. How can we handle this? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for serverpod itself, we we have written over 2,000 tests.
Mm.
So pretty much all, I wouldn't say like exactly all code has unit tests, but all new features definitely have. And I mean, we take testing very, very seriously because it's a framework that a lot of people will use. I guess it's just, uh, it is a little bit tedious work, but that's a great place where you can use AI and get a lot of help if you have many similar tests.
Mm.
So I think that is probably one of the best uses for um, ChatGPT when it comes to coding right now, and I guess copilot. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Okay. So I think for example when you just download or maybe try to run your first project with Serverpod directly, we got some default database, right?
Yes.
Mm.
So Serverpod comes with a link to Postgres, which is the database we're
Okay.
using. And we picked Postgres because it's the most commonly used and most standard APIs. For instance, if you deploy to Google Cloud, they have actually 3 different database services I just learned that have like the same Postgres interface. So that makes it, a great choice for that. They have like one that is like super scalable globally, the database you can use, and then you can use all the Postgres commands will work. So it's a good choice for a database basically. And I guess most backends will need to have a database, I would guess. So it's really nice to
Of
just have,
course.
everything coupled
Yeah.
and everything works super nice together.
Mm.
That being said, we actually just a few days ago released something called Serverpod Mini, which is Serverpod without a database.
Version 2 alpha, right?
Yeah, right. So we started working on version 2, and to create
Okay.
Serverpod Mini and a few other things, there's a few things that we need to change in the interfaces for all that to work. So that's why this is becoming a 2.0. I see we got like Tyler Code sent a message there with Mini. He actually made a great tutorial. I haven't watched it all, but I started watching yesterday, and it's like a video tutorial on
Okay.
Serverpod Mini. So that's really cool. Thanks for doing that. Um,
Okay.
so that's a little shout out. Um,
Yes. That's great because the question I want to ask is, for example, for there is different kind of developers, so there is some who really like to work with NoSQL database, for example. Does Serverpod can we handle this with by using Serverpod, for example?
Sorry, can you repeat the question there?
Yes. Okay. My question is, for example, when you create Serverpod project by default, you got like Postgre, for example.
Yeah.
So is it possible to change the database and work with another one, such as NoSQL? I don't know, MongoDB, for example.
Yeah, definitely. So there are like database drivers for many different databases. So what you don't get with those is that whole integration in the Serverpod ecosystem. So if you use Postgres, you can basically pull a row from the database. It gets like mapped into Dart objects perfectly.
Okay.
You can even handle relations and all that stuff. So that is like a really cool feature. Um, and then you can just take that object and you can send it straight to your client. You don't need to like change the data or unpack
Mm.
it or put it in some other data structure, it just works. Or it works without cache. It works with
Yeah.
future calls where you can, send it to a method that's get called sometime in the future. So you get like all these extra bonuses if you work with Postgres. But that being said, I mean, you can connect it to whatever you want. It can be anything that Dart can do, which is, I would assume, almost anything on the back end you can do with Serverpod, right? So there are no limitations in what you can do.
That's good point, because my next question was, what are Serverpod current limitation? Because
What
it looks so perfect. So what are Serverpod current limitation? Like, what kind of app couldn't we design with Serverpod if we want, for example?
the limitations.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any real limits. I think where you may consider using something else is if you need access to. I mean, the Dart ecosystem on backend is not as developed, for instance, as it is with Node.js yet. That being said, I mean, most of the stuff is already there. Like Google has APIs for all the backend APIs in Dart, and most things like services on AWS or Google Cloud you can definitely use through Dart. But there may be other services that makes that more convenient. And if there's something like that, maybe, I mean, I would suggest you look into exactly what you need before you start. But I think that could be, if anything, the sort of limiting thing with using Serverpod and Dart on the back end.
Okay. We got some interesting question. I'm going to show it directly. How do you see Serverpod involving alongside the advancement in Flutter and mobile app development technology in the coming years? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's a good question. I think for us, we try to follow everything that happens and adapt.
Okay.
I guess, I mean, that's what all tech companies will have to do in some form. But obviously, we have a lot of ideas what we want to do with Serverpod. So I can tell you a little bit more what we're working on now and shorter term what we're thinking. So we just started working on a hosting service for Serverpod. So
Okay.
that will be really, really cool when we get that ready. So, I mean, we created Terraform scripts to deploy your Serverpod to both AWS and to Google Cloud. But it involves a little bit of work and can be tricky to maintain, especially if you haven't done any backend before. It will be like quite a few steps to go through. So we will make that super streamlined. So basically creating a Serverpod deploy command. So whenever you have built your Serverpod, tested it on your computer, you can just write Serverpod deploy, and we take care of everything for you, including setting up databases and storage buckets for uploading files and whatever it can be that you need.
Okay.
So I mean, that's a huge effort. So it's hard to say exactly a timeline for that, but we're definitely something we're working on now, and I think that's sort of the biggest leap forward we're going to take.
Okay.
But I mean, apart from that, there's so many sort of components that we want to build into Serverpod, and maybe also bring it to more computer languages, so you can generate a client for JavaScript, for instance. That would be pretty sweet. Then you can run it on on a regular web page or with React Native. But yeah, we'll get there. We'll take one step at a time.
Okay, that's great. Currently, I think I was asking some question at the beginning, but you haven't listened. How many founder do you have at Serverpod? Are you working alone on that project, or are you working with the team? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're currently 4 people working full time on Serverpod, and
Okay.
we have signed one more who starts in June, and we're hiring one more in Stockholm, and we're looking for at least one more remote. So we're a little team, but currently we are 3 founders, work
Mm,
from the Stockholm office, and
okay.
we have one remote person.
Okay. So just another funny question. Where does the logo come from? Um, because I went to the website, so I just see a dog coming from. I guess it is Moon. So how was the idea behind your logo? Yeah.
Oh, you're thinking the little mascots that we have, or
Yes,
the logo itself?
the logo itself, of course. Yeah.
The logo itself, I mean, it's meant to be a little bit of a mix between the rocket and the server. I don't
Mm,
know if people see that, but um, from the start, I guess Serverpod was kind of just a working name, and I figured I would find a better name later. But it kind of stuck, and people seem to remember it. So I figured, why not? And then a pod, sort of a space pod, and then we made it into a little rocket, but it
okay.
still has the server. So that's the idea for the logo. I don't know if everyone sees this, but anyway, people seem to think it looks pretty
Yeah,
cool. So
I
we're
think it's
sticking with
cool.
it. And then we made 2 little avatars. It's the dog and the girl, and that's a friend of mine who draw those. She works in the game industry on I think Diablo 4.
Mhm.
So she's super skilled at
Yeah,
drawing things. So she made that for us.
yeah. So before we just start talking about technical parts, you were saying that your previous experience was, I mean, when you was working at for a company, it was with Google, So when you just decide to work on that project, I mean, for to embark on this adventure, did you think like you will be working for a while without making any money? Like, was it a choice? Like, I can say
Are
to
you talking
leave
about
your.
Serverpod now? Like, yeah. So I've been pretty fortunate. When I started working on Serverpod, I funded it by consulting. So
Okay.
I built an app for another startup here in Stockholm, and that then I built their app on top of Serverpod. So I got the chance to really try it out very early.
Okay.
It's really good to eat your own dog food, so to speak, and to try out the stuff you build to make sure it works. If it doesn't work for you, it won't work for anyone else, right? Uh, so that's how I started it out, and then we raised money. So we had a small, you can call it like a friends and family round early last year, and
Okay.
now we raised a pre-seed. It was actually in the news just.
Yeah. Everyone is talking about that, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, it was in the news yesterday.
Yeah.
So we raised 1.7 million euros.
Yeah.
So so we have some money to build a real team and really get this going,
Yeah.
and make sure it can be the best it can be.
Mm.
So very very happy with that. Obviously, it's a
Okay. Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
step forward.
I'm happy for you too.
Thank you.
So does Serverpod have like any house project,
Any house project?
like any in-house, like the project that maybe you are building which is different from Serverpod itself? I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we do actually. We
Okay.
have a few, but they're pretty small, but they're also a little bit fun.
Okay.
So one I built for myself. It's called Slick Slides, uh, and it's uh, a Flutter package for making slides and
Okay.
presentations with code. Because I'm giving tech talks at some
Ah.
conferences now and then. I'm actually going to give a talk at Google Cloud Next, and on Wednesday I'm talking at the Global Flutter Summit.
Yes. The
Uh,
biggest one. Mm.
yeah, and it's really a pain to do slides with code. I don't know if you've tried to do that, but you need to copy paste it, and when you change it, everything breaks with like syntax highlighting and everything. So I made a package for making really nice looking slides with code, and you can actually animate the code as well. If you add like 2 snippets of code, it will like type it in between. So check that out. It's called Slick Slides. If you that's
Okay.
an in-house project just for fun. And of course, I mean the hosting service we're building on Serverpod.
Okay.
So we're building it with our own stuff. So that will be pretty cool.
So we got some question. Will Serverpod be a big player among all the backend technology?
Definitely, yeah. I mean that's why I'm doing this. I was missing a really good solution, and I think it's not just about doing it in Dart, but also doing it right. And I've been writing both a bunch of apps. I also built. This is not the first backend solution I'm building. Actually, one
Oh,
of my
okay.
first jobs, I built a backend for an online poker that turned out to be the world's 3rd largest online poker. And back then it was quite a challenge to build, the backend. So you didn't have the tool that you had today. And we, made that scale to hundreds of thousands of simultaneous players. And then I built online multiplayer games also for quite a
Okay.
while. So I took all those experiences. I probably built 3 or 4 backend systems before Serverpod. So I have some experience and seen what works and what doesn't work and what I want to change. Yeah, I wanted to take all that knowledge and what I missed in other frameworks, and obviously we've been looking at what other players are doing too, and see what we can do better.
Okay. Yeah. Someone was saying like, so we should now learn to use Serverpod. Yeah, of course.
Yes, I hope so.
So
It'll be a good
talking
choice in
about,
the future. I don't want to give
yeah.
away exactly everything we planned, but we have some very cool features coming up that I think will be sort of game changers in the backend space too.
Yeah. Yes. Currently, Serverpod is an open source project, if I'm not saying wrong, right?
Yeah,
Because people can make a contribution directly on GitHub.
right. Yeah. So I see
Okay.
there's a
So
question. Go ahead.
someone was saying that are there any plan to introduce monetization feature or paid subscription plan for Serverpod in the future? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually what we are started building now. And what we're doing is not like the framework itself will be open. So, I mean, it's safe to use,
Okay.
and you can host it anywhere. You can host your server on your computer in your basement if you want. Uh, so I think that's a huge benefit of Serverpod. But also, we're building a hosting service, and that will be a paid feature. So that's our monetization strategy, and I think it's easily worth paying for just to make that easier. And we may even have like a free tier. We haven't exactly looked at the sort of unit economics of everything. It's a little bit hard to know yet exactly what that would look like, because there are many components involved when it comes to hosting databases and figuring out good ways to do that.
Okay. Um, talking about Serverpod, we can talk about. Of course, we can, but I'm going to be the bad man during this call. So there was project called Dart Frog, and of course, I hope that I think you know Dart Frog project. So how do you think about that Frog project? Yeah.
Dot frog. Yeah, I think I mean
Yeah.
it's cool for what it is. It's if you compare to Serverpod, we are 4 people working full time on that. versus Frog is a little bit of a smaller project, and I think it doesn't
Yeah,
really aim to
I
be a
think
whole
that
framework.
frog. Yeah, I think that frog was launched by Very Good Venture, if I'm not
Yeah,
very wrong. So it is huge team behind that project. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're big, but it's not like they're also doing 100 other things. So maybe it's not their main priority. That's what I'm thinking. But I mean, it's really, I mean, it's useful for people, and I don't think it's a bad solution. It depends on what you want to do. I think you should have a look at the different solutions and pick the ones that seems best to you. Uh,
Mm.
so I don't think there's a necessarily yes or no. It's a little bit of different products. Uh,
Yeah.
I think
So
for
I
building a big project, if you need like a database, if you need other things, uploading files, authentication, all those things, it's nice to just have it all packaged together, and it just works out of the box rather than
yeah.
finding all the pieces and piecing them together. But if you're doing something really quick and small, that could be an option.
Mm. Yeah, sure. There is someone who is saying that how to be backend developer for Flutter if I'm front end. Okay, I guess he's front end developer. I mean mobile developer.
All right.
So he want to know how to begin if he want to make a backend, for example, by using Serverpod, of course.
Right. I think there's still a little bit of a leap. We're trying to build
Mm.
more tutorials. So I'm actually coding a little bit less now and doing more developer relations,
Yeah.
but also we hired a guy to just do
Mm.
tutorials. So we hope to be much better at bridging that gap. I know for many, front-end developers, just like hearing the word database and Postgres, it feels like almost overwhelming. I mean, I know the first time I used the database, it's not like clear exactly how it works, right? But it's in a way, I think backend development is easier than front-end development because it's a little bit cleaner. When you do apps, there are so many different, paths that you have to take into consideration, right? It's like you have
Yeah.
Android, you
Sure.
have iOS, and then you have maybe the web, and there's always stuff to keep up to date. And when they change the sign in on Apple, you have to update that, and it's a lot of that sort of work. While on backend, it's you can pick your own computer and you just need to run on that, and then it's just most apps, it's just serving a couple of tables and you know serving out some data to the app. So it's for most cases, I think backends are not that hard. It's definitely way less code on
Mm.
the back end than on the front end. So that's one thing.
Sure. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people ask this question because, of course, they want to learn how to use Serverpod, but a lot of them are mostly working on the front end, like mobile, because Flutter, you know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of mobile developer working with Flutter. So, yeah, and I made a video about this quite recently, might help. That's perfect. So, there is people who still have already begun to make a tutorial on Serverpod. I think that's great news for the community.
Awesome. Yeah,
So
thank
thanks to
you.
the Tyler. Yeah.
And
So are you afraid? Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, oh yeah, Tyler Codes there. He actually did a tutorial that was released just a few days ago. So go check that out. That can be a great start
Mm,
in computer. And there are
yeah.
tutorials out there for sure,
Okay.
but we
That's
can
perfect.
definitely
So
do better.
mm, okay. Are you afraid of the competition? Like, by competition, I mean that for or any kind. I think it was last week. I was saying that there was another backend. I don't know. It was cloud solution also building with Dart. I forgot the name
Are you thinking of
of
Celeste,
of
maybe?
yes, Celeste. That's right.
Yeah, they're
So,
doing some
how
cool
do you
stuff.
think
Or
about, yeah?
Yeah.
How do you
So
think
I think
about the competition itself?
if we were, I think generally it's great to have more Dart backend stuff, because that will sort of grow the whole ecosystem. So we're not so afraid
Mm,
in that sense. Of course, it's a competitor to us, but I think now it's just one guy. So and we have put in, you know, 2 years of work into Serverpod or something, or yeah, plus we're a whole team, and they're starting in a little bit of a different end, which I could be very smart actually. They're starting, it feels like, building the deployment service while we started building the whole, you know, shebang, and then we're building the hosting
yeah.
service. So, I mean, it's a different starting points. I think we're climbing out
Mm,
up the same mountain at the end, probably. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what he does with Celeste.
yeah. Okay. That's a great point because I think Flutter market is still growing like very fast because nowadays you got different kind of community. We got like GDE also living apart from anywhere in the world. So how do you think about Flutter job market in general? You know?
Okay, that's an interesting question. It seems to be growing, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I mean, I have the feeling there are not so many really experienced Flutter developers out there yet. There are a few that are like really good. So we still have,
Mm.
I mean, to work, we're looking for developers at Serverpod, but we need people
That
who.
was my next question.
Okay, I'm jumping there already. So it's it's pretty hard to find really good developers, and for Serverpod, it's quite different from building an app. You can get away with not having perfect code, but if you write a framework like Serverpod, it needs to be like, perfect. The code needs to be like very
Perfect. Yeah.
high quality. There need to be tests. There need to be, you can't take any shortcuts really, like you can when you're building an app. When you're building an app, or if
Yes.
you're just a single developer, you can get away with a lot of stuff, right? But when when you have thousands of developers using the stuff you are doing, you really want it to be good and solid. And yeah, you need a little bit of experience to work on a project like Serverpod. It's also, very complex pieces in there when it comes to things like the code generation and the whole database layer. It's not just like using the database is pretty easy, but all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, it's freaking
Mhm.
complex, it
Yeah.
turns out. And there's so many edge cases, and you need to be able to handle every single one. So yeah, if you listening to this and are a great developer, you should definitely get in touch.
Yes.
Yeah, we're looking for you.
So for everyone who just come here for this live session, if you are looking for the job and if you think you are a very good developer, don't hesitate. I think later I will put the link for job description that Serverpod have already made. So
Yeah,
you can reach Victor or whatever you want or directly submit on the website. Yes, shout out to Daniel also in the comment section who just say hey. Hello. And so we were talking about the hiring process itself. So
yeah.
is it true that like being used sorry, I just want okay, I got someone who asked some interesting question. Do you think that if the Flutter community is growing fast now and the competition is getting high, will it remain unplayable for the future? Yeah, that's a great question.
uh, uh, Yeah, I think there will be way more Flutter jobs in the future, and Flutter seems the most promising front-end framework right now. So I think there will be definitely developer jobs in the future for Flutter, and that is growing. Uh, there. Yeah, I have a few things I want to bring up. So if we go one step back to the whole
Yes, of course.
question about like the hiring process. I made a
Mm.
little rant on LinkedIn. I don't know if you saw it, but it was probably a
Yes,
week
I saw
ago.
it. I saw it. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Don't talk about it now. I'm going to ask you the question. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, but they're all related, so maybe I can get there. But
Yeah.
for Serverpod, we get like hundreds of applications, but most of the applications are someone connecting on LinkedIn and saying like, "Hello, sir," period, and you go to the page and it's like an empty page, and they may have you know or they send a CV that is like 10 pages long with like all the projects they worked on, and not a single link works, so you can't actually check anything. Or yeah, there's this guy who sent over, I did like open source contributions to these three big repositories, and then you checked it out. It's like, yeah, he made two pull requests that got rejected, and the third one he changed like 5 letters. So how is that like a real achievement that you want to put in your resume? So my advice to people who are looking for jobs: make sure that your resume looks like really sharp. Have someone look through it. If you submit code, I mean, it's great to be able to show code that you have done, but make sure that it looks spotless. And you find, if you're not sure, make sure you get like a senior developer to read through it, give you feedback, and fix it up. And make sure like all links you send are works. And it's much better to just have one or two good examples than having 10 that are crap, or like
Mm.
maybe they're too good in there that I just don't find. But I'm not, if I'm going through 200 resumes, I'm not going to click on the 10 links when the first two don't work, right? Then
Mm.
I'm like, okay, next. So I don't think it would be like too hard to stand out for most people if they just take a day to make sure your resume looks spotless. Make sure you have a few demos, maybe even make your resume in a Flutter app. Some people
Mm.
do that, and it could look really cool if you're good at that. And also, when you send that personal message with your resume, you just need to be like a sentence or two, but show that you understand what job you're applying for.
Mm.
So we get like half of the applications are like, I'm great at React Native, JavaScript, and Python. It's like, okay, uh, you're not like, you're applying for a senior Dart developer role.
Yeah.
It doesn't match, right? So maybe you can say like, I worked with this, but I'm like a super fast learner. I'll learn Dart in 2 weeks, maybe, and I have a computer science degree. Then we will still look at you, right? So think a little bit. And if you're applying for a job okay, I'm ranting on here, but if you're applying for a job,
Yeah,
you
feel
want
free. Feel free to talk.
like a technical writing, for instance,
Mm.
make sure you spell your messages correct. Because I mean, that's the only thing we can judge how good of a writer you are on. If you say, I want to be a technical writer for you, and then you have misspelled 3 words in that sentence, then maybe I don't think this is the technical writer we're looking for. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was the rant.
So
A little bit longer, I
I,
guess.
I'm going to get back to that point, but let me just show the question that I think it was Mr. Azad. So he
Oh yeah.
said there's many way of testing Flutter app, like when you testing, of course, widgets. Yeah. So I want to know about Serverpod. If there anything to check or test Serverpod code.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, you're freezing up a little bit now. I don't know if it's me or you, but I'll keep going. Yeah, you can definitely do unit tests. I'm going to check the internet connection here. Yeah, not me. To do that, basically, I think the best approach doing tests for Serverpod right now is to do unit tests where you can. And that may mean that you need to break out your methods and classes a bit smarter to be able to do that. But that shouldn't be a problem. You can also do... Oh, you're back. We lost you there. I'm talking a little bit about end-to-end tests here, or unit tests I covered first. So, I mean, that's definitely... You just use the regular Dart tests to do end-to-end tests. And... to do the unit test. You do that like any other Dart. It's just standard Dart code. But you can also obviously do end-to-end tests, and then you need to set up a client and call the server. And typically what we do, we've done that for like Serverpod's tests. We have both end-to-end tests and unit tests. And we basically, you just set up a client and call it, and you probably want to start by sometimes adding a little bit of data in the database. And you do
do you have any kind of partnership with other company in order to, I mean, I can say promoting a Serverpod? Because there's someone, for example, who was saying that when company will work with Serverpod and start to hire developer, maybe for that, you know.
So yeah, we have probably like 500 companies already building stuff on Serverpod.
Okay.
And we have over 5,000 developers who tried it out. And actually, I looked at our stats today, and they look pretty stunning. It's over a third of everyone who starts playing around or with our tooling still using it a month later. So a lot of people who get started with Serverpod really likes it and start building projects. So that's really cool. I don't know. It's hard to say with like the hiring how long time until there will be job ads for Serverpod, but maybe half a year, maybe a year.
Yeah,
we're
growing
very fast. So yeah.
So there's someone who is saying he's learning C++ for gaming, of course, but he wants to switch to Flutter. So I think he's beginner. Yeah. So
so I would say like C++ is not my favorite language, to be honest. I think it's very, very messy, and it's like Dart is so much nicer. The problem with C++ is it's been around for so long, so they have like 10 different ways to do everything from like handling memory to, I don't know, everything. And sometimes they don't work together, and it's hard to find, like, piece everything together. Plus the code is hard to read and write. So, I mean, I prefer working in Dart any day. I mean, C++ for game development, I don't think that is...
I think C# is better.
You build a game engine, maybe, but I mean, most games are built with Unity or...
with Unity.
There's other tools, so they typically don't use C++ anyway. So, I mean, and I think it's pretty cool what you can do, like the sort of graphical abilities in Flutter are getting way better with a new shader support, so you can do much cooler games. Probably wouldn't do like 3D games with Flutter yet, but maybe soonish. That would be cool. But definitely for 2D, if I would make a 2D game, I would definitely choose Dart, and I would use either probably... I actually built a game library for Flutter, but I don't think it's very widely used. It's called Sprite Widget. You can check it out at spritewidget.dev. But was the other called Flame. It's probably what most people would use, and seems like a lot of people like it. So I think that can definitely be a cool thing. I think what they really lack is having some cool demos to showcase what you can actually do. That's always great for a game framework to have, because under the hood, most of them are kind of similar in a way. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's someone who is that question is very I don't know, but would you mind to give your opinion, because you want to know if there is some special country where Flutter is more using. I don't have statistics, so I will let you.
Okay, so I was talking at FlutterConf India in December, and let me tell you, Flutter is absolutely huge in India. Uh,
Okay.
I don't know about Russia, but what I hear is like India, maybe South America. It's like Europe and the United States are lagging maybe a little bit in terms of popularity, but in those countries, it's very, very big. But I think it's definitely catching on. I know in Sweden they're a little bit conservative, and it takes a little bit uh, of a while to adapt maybe, and they're a little bit faster there. So we'll see. Um,
Yeah. So someone is asking if Serverpod got restriction in China.
uh, Not Serverpod itself. I mean, you can run it as long as you have a web server, but who knows what it will block. That I can't answer. I think it depends more on what service you're building than what your tooling you're using, to be honest.
Yes, I think so. Let me check if there is other question. Yeah, there is some question I didn't really understand, but I will try to show you. Can you read um what will you use further in case you need some online feature like you share info on one screen with another person? Um Maybe he want to talk about
So
like application like Zoom or yeah, those kind of sharing
right.
screen. Yeah.
So I think there can be different use cases here uh, that we're talking about. One is real-time communication, and that's something we definitely can do with Serverpod very well. We have an example called Pixorama.live, which is like a multi-user drawing experience
Yes,
where
I have checked it. Yeah, this is good. By the way, I really like it.
it's like our what was it, all our places on Reddit, where
Yeah.
you can like, it's pixel art that everyone can draw at the same time. I mean, it's a simple demo, but it shows it's just a single page of code,
Mm.
so it's pretty easy um, to set up and learn. And we made that to showcase how you can do real time communication and like the principles. Um, so I mean, that's one thing. If it comes to video, that is way trickier. Um, Typically, you can use something like WebRTC. So that is what your web browser uses, and most video, probably what we're using now. But you need a WebRTC server to do that, and that's something you probably don't want to build in Dart. But for that to work, you also need a messaging service. So that's
Mm.
basically a way to know that we should connect. So I'll send you a message when, like, giving you a call, and that you probably want to do with something like Serverpod to do that sort of real-time communication there. And then you both connect to that RTC server, and then you can connect the chat and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's doing chat stuff. It's not, unfortunately, not
Mm.
very easy to do. It's I think for one-on-one chat probably pretty easy, but if you want to do
Yeah.
something more advanced like broadcasting, like we're doing now, or stuff like that, then it's way harder.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. Okay, so for example, if someone is planning, I say someone, but it is myself. I'm talking about myself. Um, because currently I'm working on some just fun project, and it is some kind of just chat app like WhatsApp.
Yeah,
with other. Can I just decide to use Serverpod for that as
def-
backend server?
definitely. We actually wrote a chat module for Serverpod. Uh,
Okay.
so you'll get like that functionality in there for free, basically. Um,
Mm,
so you can, if you're building a chat app, you have the server ready. You can even the Flutter
okay.
components are ready. So that's something I think is pretty unique for Serverpod, how we structure the server. You can add different modules to the server. Right now, we only have two official modules, and that's authentication, and then we have the chat. And you can just add in those packages. And when you run Serverpod, it will actually add those database tables that it needs. It creates like endpoints in their own namespaces for the different modules, and it
Mm,
just hooks everything up. And it's almost like magic how that works. So to add a chat, you just add the chat module. The server side part of it is like literally 3 lines of code, and you have a chat server in your Serverpod. So that's pretty cool.
okay.
Um, um, uh, I think, I mean, if we had like an unlimited number of developers, that's something we would add more modules for all sorts of stuff. I think that would be cool. But we're also hoping the whole community will start picking that up and build serverpod modules that you can plug and
Mm,
play.
of course. So, for someone, for example, because I think there is also, we got different kind of people who are following us. There is beginner, intermediate, and also some seniors. But for someone whom just starting, uh, and look, I can say he's beginner, for example, and he's looking for a job. What advice would you give to him? Like,
If you're a beginner and looking for a job, I think uh, not just like look for a job, but also take time to build your portfolio and
okay.
make a few things that you can showcase. Um, I think that can be very well spent time. So depends on your experience level, right? But development and programming is something you always need to practice. It takes time to learn and master, and there's always more to learn, right? Even if
Sure.
you studied computer science and all these
Mm,
things, it's not like um, taking that to a real job. There are quite a few steps on the way to make that work.
yeah.
But you can definitely bridge that gap by building your own little projects. And if you can make, it doesn't need to be a huge project. Start small and make
Yeah.
something that you think is fun, and then you have, an app that you can show someone, um,
Yes.
and that definitely can help you also when you look for a job.
Mm. So, currently you are, I mean, a CEO and founder. So, of course, you are hiring people. So, how do you know if someone is good profile or not? Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's very very hard to tell. For the people we are hiring in Stockholm, we always look at the references, and we only hired very experienced people. So the ones on team now, I mean, I worked at the Flutter team at Google. One of the guys was lead developer on Minecraft before he joined Serverpod, and one was CTO for a big startup and had like 10 developers there. And
yeah,
then we also did like technical tests with them. And the ones we hired now, one is a senior developer at Spotify, and
okay,
we're looking to hire one more, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything works out, who is a staff engineer at Volvo Cars.
okay, okay.
So and then we obviously check their references too, and
Yes, yes, of course.
you,
I
you know,
think I will refer you some people. They are very, very, very good. But
yeah,
yeah, okay.
and we do some
And
technical tests with them to make sure they're on
yeah,
par.
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah,
That's normal. Um, So, just another funny question. Do you use ChatGPT or Copilot, for example, or how do you think about those kind of tools as developer, for working?
I think we probably should use everything that makes our job easier and faster. But right now, I think Copilot and ChatGPT writes more crappy code than it writes good code, at least for the stuff I'm trying to use it for. So, yeah, we'll see. It's hard to say where we'll go, but I feel like OpenAI obviously were ahead of Google. Google in the past year, I think they have, put every single resource they have to make Gemini, better than ChatGPT. And I guess it is. But if ChatGPT 4 is here, Gemini is like here. It's not here, right?
Yes.
So even with all those resources, they just took like a little step up. It doesn't feel like it's going like this. It's more like maybe, I think there need to be some other technical innovation in there before we really make another leap in the AI. And I mean, that could be maybe when someone cracks it tomorrow or someone cracks it in 10 years. I don't know. But I think there's something that's missing in like the whole setup with the large language models. For instance, it's like they don't have a common sense. If you ask this question to ChatGPT or Gemini, it's not a trick question. This is the question. You have one bottle that is 3 liters, you have one that's 5, and you have one that's 8. And you want to measure 3 liters of water. How do you do it? So, most people, they will fill up the 3-liter bottle and be done with it. If you ask this to ChatGPT, it will have like a very elaborate plan of how you pour the water back and forth between the bottles, which is, it's probably seen 1,000 puzzles of people pouring water between bottles, but no one writes about like, I have a 3-liter bottle, I fill it up with 3 liters of water.
Yes.
That's the answer. So it's really lacking some very basic reasoning or logic. And I think the same thing is true for coding. It's like it puts together things that looks right, but it's not necessarily right. And I checked actually some studies on that, on like how much more productive teams are with Copilot. And one found them to be teams that used Copilot were maybe 5% more productive, and another study showed 2.7% more or something like that. So it's not like a huge leap, but it's definitely a help. And I think it depends on what you're building or how helpful it is.
Totally agree. I think there is someone who say, how do you call the Serverpod standalone? Yeah, there is some question. Let me just show it. Can you still hear me? Just
Yes,
want to make
I do
sure.
hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
You're still with me.
So, yeah, tonight my connection is bit bad, but someone is asking if Serverpod is Serverpod a standalone app or a widget in Flutter? Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, it's definitely a standalone app, I guess,
Yeah.
but it also have a Flutter integration. So you run basically 2 apps, one on the server, which is your Serverpod, and you run your Flutter app, which talks with the Serverpod.
Yeah. Yeah. So, though there is some another person who is asking that if you want to advise him like building 3 different kind of app with Serverpod, which one are going to?
I think if you pick a reasonably advanced app from the start, that will be all you need. But it's pretty easy and straightforward to get going with. Real-time communication can be a little bit more tricky, so I think that's the sort of the advanced topic of basically any kind of server programming. But yeah. Uh,
Okay.
I see one
Um.
question that I like. Someone asks how to be
Okay.
programmer like
Yeah.
you. They might be talking about you, Fabrice.
Sorry. Which question? I didn't say it. Who to become a cool? You are talking about this question, like how to become a cool programmer. I
Right.
think he. I like this one.
I don't know if I have an answer, but
Oh my god.
um,
So in Serverpod having a YouTube channel from promoting. Yes, I think. Not I think. I'm sure. There is Serverpod channels and also other developer who are. I say developer, other YouTuber also who are making different kind of tutorials. Talking about Serverpod, and yeah, you can
yeah,
check it directly on YouTube, or if you want, you can also go to the Serverpod documentation, and you are going to find them. So they're
that's right.
there. Yeah. How many people are contributing to Serverpod? That's a
So
good
we
question.
have around 25 people who contributed significant
Okay.
code to Serverpod. Actually, some have spent probably months of work, like outside of the
Mhm.
core team. But
Yes.
we're four people on the core team now. But outside of Serverpod, we had like 25 more people that added code. So
That's
that's
great.
pretty cool. I mean,
Mm.
for me, that's what keeps me going. Seeing people using Serverpod and getting all the feedback, and it's pretty awesome. Um,
Yeah.
I have one more thing that I would love to, when we talked a little bit about community and that. I don't know if you saw.
Yes, I think I know. It was my next question, but I will let you introduce. I'm
I'm like
going
one
to
ahead all
come.
the time here.
Yes, of course you can talk about it. And I was also think maybe I'm going to fill the form to be a speaker for that event, but I will let you talk
Oh
about that.
yeah, please do. So
Yes,
we're hosting a big online Flutter conference called
yes, the
Fullstackflutter.
biggest one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's called, the website is fullstackflutter.dev. And we actually, I think yesterday, we released the first uh,
Mm.
16 speakers. And I mean, the lineup is incredible if you haven't seen it. We are uh, actually the one more that's confirmed that's not up on the page, but it will be four developers who used to work on the Flutter team speaking at the conference, at least. I'm trying to get a few more. Uh,
Mm.
Plus, I mean, there's a lot of the people. We really try to track down people that actually, built the Frog framework to talk about it, rather than just a person talking about
Okay.
it. So
Mm.
most of the talks are by either the CEOs of the companies that have, Code Magic or Widgetbook, or uh, what's it called, Shorebird for pushing code.
Yes,
Uh,
Shepherd also.
so uh, it's pretty cool that we get all those people. And yeah, you should, if you're listening to this either live or the podcast, you should go to fullstackflutter.dev and sign up, so you make sure you get the spot. Uh,
Mm.
will be
Of course,
you.
I will add also the link in the description later,
Oh, thank
so
you.
people can. Yes. Mm.
All right, so that was a little plug, but it's all free, so it's not like we're making any money out of it. It's just for the
Sure.
community, and there will be a
Mm.
focus on both, Dart on the server and the whole Flutter ecosystem, not just, which state management should I choose, but like way more things that we hope will be super interesting to people.
Yeah. So I think we are reaching at the end of our interview. Don't know if we got other question or maybe some question that we didn't answer.
Yeah, there were
Um,
quite a few questions. Thanks to everyone for tuning
uh,
in. And
yes, they were very active. So thanks to everyone. um, yeah, I think we have give a response to almost every question. Someone just mentioned. Thank you so much for interview. Thank you guys. So before we just left, I think we are reaching at the end. So do you have any word to tell to beginner, intermediate, senior, whatever you want?
all right.
So yeah, feel free to end this live with your own word. Yeah.
I I think my advice to developers is, have fun. It's coding. I think can be so rewarding and fun when you find that flow and you have a project that you work on and build. It's just enjoy what you're doing. That is my biggest advice, and then rest of the pieces will fall in place, I think. I think we may have lost Fabrice again.
It,
Oh, you're
no,
back.
I'm here. I'm
You're
here.
back.
Can you hear me? I'm back. It is the end, but I have heard everything you just say, and I totally agree. I think coding is just like a voyage. It is a big journey. So to read that, you just need to continue to improve yourself, talk with people who got more experience, try to learn from almost everything, try to build solution, and yeah, that's the all. And maybe one day you are going to launch your own startup like Victor. He's so inspiring. So yeah, that's all I can say. Thank you, Victor, for accepting join me for this session. I really like it, even if my connection was a bit bad during the live. But yeah, it was a huge pleasure to have you there.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.